No, absolutely not. And I think, especially over the past year or two, I think we've got a lot better at really explaining to people how things work. We still have work to do. I think that we're still able to, we're doing a lot better job now of explaining to people that when they're donating to that container, they're donating to the group that's hosting that container. It's not like they're donating directly to us. So when that's in that church parking lot or that school parking lot, they donate to the church. We then buy the books from that church or school or whatever organization. Then we take them back. Now there are books to figure out what do we do with them now. And it's the same as if, such as a yard sale. Everyone donates their books to the yard sale at the church. The church has this big yard sale, sells the books. In this, it's a lot easier for the groups. And we give them all the method, all the logistics figured out for them. We'll empty the container. We do all the work for them, promoting it. So it's really just the same as if people dropped it off and then they called us up and said, hey, we've got a couple hundred books. You want to come buy them? But we've now been able to do that on a larger scale.
But you open yourself up to criticism, though, when most of the bins we've seen just say donate in big letters. There's nothing that discloses that it's a for-profit company and
Sure.
somebody's making money off of it.
Sure, well, I think that's one of the things that we're doing a lot better now. All of the containers, I believe the last 100 or so that have gone out, and we're adding that to each of the containers now, have a thing on there that will actually tell you what group is benefiting from that particular container. So that's important to us because we want people to understand that. I think that's something that we failed in the past of showing people that, hey, when you donate these, yes, some of them will be resold, but we're going to find a good use for these books, and there's a group that's really making money out of this. Each of these groups make a good amount of money. Now these containers are a lot better with the signage on there, and we're always looking at ways to improve it. Plus the website's on the container, so if people do go to the website, I think we've done a decent job of explaining to people through the website, how everything works.
Could you afford to give more back?
It's funny, we actually just had that conversation this morning. If we even paid a tiny percent more, even a penny more per pound or whatever, it would pretty much put us out of business.
Why?
That little bit, the costs are a lot more than what people think. As you saw with the warehouse, when you have close to 100 employees, you have this huge warehouse that's obviously expensive. You have 5 stores like this, multiple trucks out there, advertisements that so people learn about this. Those containers alone, it's a huge amount of money every month. It's very, very tight.
But people are going to look at these stores and say, surely he's expanding.
Sure.
Surely he's making a big profit.
Absolutely, and it's one of the things people comment on a lot. We talked about this a little bit earlier with sales. We run sales all the time. People joke about it occasionally, like, how do you have a sale on a $2 book? What people don't realize until they come in here is that most of these books are going to be in that, for kids' books, around $1.29, and most of your adult books are going to be, $1.99, $2.99 and up. We looked at a bunch of books earlier, and most of the paperbacks were under $6, and that's even for some new bestsellers that are recent.
How much profit are you making?
It's actually less than 1%, which is actually less than what the typical retailers make.
So if there was that little amount of profit, though, why keep going?
It's volume. You have to do the volume. We have to do large amounts. With those, when we empty that container, we get in those books, we know that there's going to be, out of every 100 books, less than 20 or so will even have some use for us. And that's not even to say, we might send it to the store, but we're not going to sell every book that goes to the store. We have to just do the volume.
There's a cost of doing business that you talked about over at the warehouse, too, where you just kind of know, rather than tell people, put strict guidelines on some of this stuff, you just kind of know you're going to have to deal with some bad stuff.
Oh, without a doubt, it's going to happen. We'd love it to say, hey, if the books, only had a barcode on it or this or that, but we don't want to do that because we do find uses for things that, if people are overly picky, they're not going to give us stuff that we would actually find a use for.
How costly is it then for you to have to throw away a lot of it?
Extremely costly. If you take a look at that pre-sort, that process where we're sorting the books, if they're going to initially recycle 50% of it because of damage and problems like that, if we didn't receive that half of those books, there'd be a lot less labor involved in it. Because we have to touch those and decide, hey, we don't need this, we throw it here. Somebody else has to move it out there, put it into a truck. There's a lot of work involved in that.
Do you think you would have been so successful if people didn't think they were donating?
Oh, I think absolutely. I think the success has really come from working with these nonprofit groups. They've, we have plenty of people out there that will tell you how, great it has been working with us. The amount of money that they've been able to raise is stuff that they wouldn't have been able to raise other way, through other methods. It's been easy for them. So I think that they're the ones that have really helped us be successful because, as I said, if it works for them, it works for us. The more that they get, the more they get paid, the more that we have to be able to do everything that we do.
What's the value of a book that gets sold for profit versus the value of a book that goes to a school or one of the nonprofits?
There's really not a way to define the value of what goes to the groups. for example, as I said, if the school contacts us and says, I need 200 books for a 4th grade class, they'll actually come, most of the time we'll have one of the people from the store collect those books, box them up, and send them to us. So that's stuff that was literally just on our shelves a little while ago that we'll send right over to that group. So
I'm not sure if I understand it. So there's no way for you to tell, well, let me ask you a more
Sure.
simplified way. Are you selling the better books and then giving them kind of the lesser books that you just think I can't make a profit on?
no, it's as I said, when they so let's say a teacher contacts us and they need something for a 4th grade class, we'll take the books right from here because they're already sorted by age group here. It's much easier. We'll take them from here, so they'll get a good selection of stuff. Because if we give them stuff that's no use to them, that doesn't benefit anybody. We want it so that they're actually going to be able to use these books.
So pretty much the final question on this part, but do you think there's anything wrong with putting the word donate on the bins?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's they are donating to the groups that we work with. Donate to the group, we'll buy the books, and I think that's something we'll just continue to make sure that people understand and explain to people. And I think once people understand that, they're okay with it.
And it's by the pound?
It's by the pound.
What happens if you get, somebody decides they want to unload their law library, or they have, several shelves of encyclopedias
Sure.
from Britannica and World Book?
Sure. It definitely happens. It's part of the averages. We know that it's going to happen occasionally. We try to educate people both if they call us or through the website of what the type of stuff that we're not looking for. It's also on the containers. It's going to happen. We don't, obviously prefer people don't put it in there because it's not helping anybody. You're better off recycling it, but we know that it does happen.
You said you use the 1% if you were, talk about the 1% again.
Sure.
It's what, 1% profit?
1% profit, sure. So every $100 worth of books that we sell in the store, this is to the overall company with the online and the store, about $1 is profit.
With that in mind, what do you say to people who say he should be donating more to these libraries, he should be donating more to senior centers?
Sure. It's first of all, most of them don't have any idea of what we've donated to these different groups, and how we have one group in particular that's raised over $75,000 with us. And through the years now, we're up to almost $1.3 million that we've given back to these groups. And a majority of these groups were ones that would not have, they didn't have this system in place of collecting books and selling them. We've created that for them, and that's how they wouldn't have that money otherwise.
What do you want people to know about your company and your bins versus other bins that they see that look the same?
I think that each one of those bins, there's a nonprofit group behind there that is excited about raising the money. They have things that they want to, programs that they want to fund, and then by putting your books in there, your books are going to get a second life. People are going to enjoy your books. They're going to be made available, whether we're giving them away or whether they're at our stores at a very, very, very low price. And also that group is going to raise money with it.
But what are the other people doing that you're not in favor of?
They're a lot of times placing bins without permission. They put it out there, and they're strictly for profit and don't have nonprofit groups tied into that.
You used the term win-win before for your
Yes.
company. Is that what it is?
It is. It's a win-win. It's because we can't succeed without the nonprofit groups succeeding. The better they do, the better we do. It works out well for everybody.
Can you just touch on too, because you talked about it in the warehouse, like a lot of the stuff in these containers is like 80% junk or whatever
Sure.
percent uses. I think that will help people understand too, like, okay, it's not like you're getting like,
No,
you know.
and that's, I think you got some pictures of it too, which is good.
Yeah, so let's touch on that then. So if you get the typical bin, how much of it can you sell and how much of it can you donate?
Sure. So between selling and between donating, or let's just say finding a use for the books, a lot of times it'll be only about 20% of what comes in, and that's through either the damage of stuff in there that just have no use, whether it's those old textbooks or just really damaged books that people probably should just recycle instead of giving them to us, or it's the a particular book, let's say Da Vinci Code, where we might get 100 of those every single day. There's only so many we could find a use for. We're good, we have a lot of outlets. There's only so many times we could find a use for that Danielle Steele book or the Da Vinci Code. We'll be able to use some of them, but not in the volume that we can get in.
What about the tax-deductible receipts? You only give them out at 5 of them? Why is that?
So it's up to the group, again, because you're donating to the nonprofit group, it's up to them whether they want to issue the receipts or not. So there's 5 locations that will issue the receipts to you. So just like any other donation, people go and drop it off, they're able to get a receipt for that at those 5 locations.
But most of it's, I guess, for them, it's just a matter of convenience rather than doing the paperwork and all that.
Absolutely.
Just dump it and go.
Yeah, without a doubt. And a lot of the organizations too, say schools, for example, they're not sitting there writing out tax receipts. It's the groups that are already equipped to do that. It's easy for them to do that. They'll do it.
And how long does it take to fill one of those bins? How regularly do you have to go back and pick it up?
Sure. It varies. If they fill once every month or two, that's probably a pretty good average, and that's a decent bin. If it's taking more than that to fill, we'll work with them to see, what else can we do? Is there anything else we can do to help you promote it better, that we can do to help you promote it, or promote it for you? And some of them produce even more than that. We have some that will produce every other week.
There's so much talk these days about how are bookstores going to survive. We just
Sure.
watched Borders shut so many of its doors, maybe all of its.
No, all of them.
But and they're leaving all this retail space behind, and people are wondering, boy, is that going to be it for books? Is everyone going to turn to iPhones? How do you sustain this?
Sure, and I think that's really interesting about what we do, especially with the stores. With the books, yes, people are definitely going to the e-books. There's no doubt about it, but not everybody, and not everybody's going to just pick one or the other. So with our stores, because of our pricing, if you have the opportunity to come in here and buy a hardcover book at $2.99, or you could download it for $9.99, just for the cost reasons alone, a lot of times you'll turn to this. And then a huge percentage of our of our customer base, we've done this in surveys. We've asked them that have no intention of ever getting an ebook. They like the feel of the book, or just that technology is not for them. As time goes on, in the next 20 years, it's definitely more and more will go towards that. But I think by providing a store with such a selection, low prices, we're going to be able to beat out the ebooks in that sense. I think that's the biggest thing.
You started out selling online.
Yes.
Do you do as much online anymore?
We still do, but it's we still do a decent amount online. That's where a lot of the cost. As I said, if it sits in the store and we're just waiting for someone to come in and buy that particular academic book, it just sits on the shelves. We need to be turning the stuff faster. So we still do a lot online, but over the past year, because the stores have been really popular, we get a lot of people, a lot of customers. We've been pushing more and more books over to the store that normally we might not have had before. So that way, it's making our selection even better.
Is it hard to keep up?
Keep up with changes, or
is it hard to keep up with the amount of books coming in, and even keeping up with? I'm not sure how much volume you're doing online, but just to keep up with requests online.
No, we're pretty good about it. We've automated a lot of it, and we've been doing this for a while. And a lot of the people that work for me have been with me for a long time, so they really understand it. They know the system, and we continue to change things. If we find a better way to do it, we'll do it. So we definitely continue to make improvements. But when this stuff comes in, if we all of a sudden get a day or a week where we get a lot more books than we typically do, we can make a couple adjustments and handle that. And the same thing when it's slower, we can make adjustments also.
I know that every business has problems, and Amazon has issues, and
Sure.
Barnes & Noble has issues. But one of the first people who contacted us, or who we spoke to about your store, he was a guy who purchased a book online. He attempted to purchase a book online. The book that he requested arrived. It was the incorrect book, and then through the process of trying to get the correct book, it never happened. He went to the Better Business Bureau, and then eventually he got a letter basically saying sorry, but it never worked out. What do you think happened there?
That's it's something slipped through the cracks, because we have 2 people dedicated just to handling emails. Go ahead and don't put that on here. Go ahead and buy a book though, and go ahead and say that you have a problem with it. You'll see how fast it's handled. It's immediate. You tell us that you have a problem with it, we're going to handle it right away. We also have quality control checks to make sure that that's not happening. But if we're going to ship out hundreds or thousands of books, it's going to happen. Something will happen occasionally, but I think we're pretty good about catching that stuff. And without a doubt, though, we are very quick about issuing a refund, sending out the right thing if something like that happens. So things like that, I've never seen a case where we've been able to dig through the emails and see that person didn't contact us, or what did they use to contact us. Usually just there was some issue that just, it slipped through. Because
Do you get many complaints?
No, not many at all. It's actually, if you take a look at our online site, for example, 97% of positive comments. And I think it's 1 or 2% with negative out of the whole amount. And that's only about 1 out of every 10 customers will actually give a review. So it's such a small percentage.
What is it like for your parents to walk into one of these stores and go, boy, this all started in our basement?
It's really funny, because they thought, as I've said, my mother, when I told her that I was going to quit my full-time job to sell books, Mom said, Bob, you can do anything you put your mind to. And my father didn't have the exact same thought. You're going to sell books out of our basement. He liked me sticking with more of the corporate route and work my way up.
What does he think now?
They're both very happy. They're actually, my father especially is over my Burlington store quite often. He goes to yard sales. He'll buy DVDs and games, and he'll be dropping them off at the store. So they're over there quite a bit. They love it. My niece comes over and plays at the Burlington store. So they're both very, very happy with how everything's gone.
How big do you think you can make this? You're already the biggest in New England?
Absolutely, yeah. These stores are actually the largest. To find a used bookstore even at this size, you have to go very, very far to find that. It's so in New England, without a doubt, we're the largest. We can continue to grow this with the stores, especially because there are so many good books out there, and we're able to offer them at such a low price. And that's where you keep such a loyal customer base. As we were talking about, our average customer comes in once a month. That's often. I mean, that's really good. But they know that by us changing inventory all the time, adding new things, there's going to be something new and exciting, or something that they're going to miss out on if they don't keep checking back.
The amount given to charity, almost 1.3 million.
Yes.
How much do you think that will grow?
Oh, it continues to grow. I mean, every month we're writing out huge amounts of checks for them. So it's absolutely going to grow. It's a big part of what we do.
And that's all going to be based on how much people can almost generate for themselves?
Absolutely. It's the more that they collect, the more that they're going to get paid for it. So yeah, we're more than happy to do it. We're excited to see that number grow.
So I guess that's where the win-win comes from.
Without a doubt.
You can, as a business, you can make more, and as a nonprofit, they can make more.
Without a doubt, absolutely.
Do you have extras?
Do you have anything you want to add that we didn't ask?
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot of it. Is there anything you thought I missed or
Any
catch it?
points?
I think the last question, maybe a different way to look at that is where else we're expanding geographically.
Sure.
Yes, the nonprofits can grow their revenues, but also we're placing more and more
Yeah.
book collection containers
Yeah,
into.
Before
Sure.
you start that, I just want to change my camera angle for that one. Why don't we do that as the two-shot? So like with me in it? Not me
Do
looking
you
at
want
me.
these reversals while I'm here? Because I gotta move everything.
No. So get the two-shot now, like the over-the-shoulder.
Over the show, yeah.
Hold on, don't answer just yet because I need that out.
But was that just about like where the gut books where we're now reaching
Expanding the geography,
Sure.
we're moving
Yeah,
more
we
into
talked about
Connecticut.
New England. I failed to follow up with how much bigger you want to go.
Sure.
Yeah, we're moving into Maine now, we're moving into northern,
Connecticut.
the whole area.
Sure.
We're Metro Boston right now, and it's moving out and down.
You need to move or.
Oh, so how many more, like by the end of the year, do you think? Or it's 5 stores now, but
Oh,
Five-
not,
there'll be
no,
more
we're
stores
talking
by
about
the end of the year,
containers,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's
Oh,
basically, that's,
Containers.
that's more to do with the technology. We've changed a lot of the technology as we talked about. We really want to fix that, kind of refine that, make sure that everything's running really smoothly before we open up more stores.
Yeah.
But we can absolutely open up more stores. There's no doubt about that. Yep.
So you started, your first store was where?
Burlington.
And how much do you think you can expand beyond Massachusetts?
There's definitely, so what was interesting, when we opened up the Burlington store, it was somewhat of a standalone store. There was some businesses around, but it was more in a residential area too, on a main street, so that was interesting. Then we opened up the Danvers store in a shopping plaza, which was a totally different market. We want to see how did that work. And the third store we opened was in a mall. And so the idea was that by opening 3 stores, let's see what works best. And what was interesting is they all did well. They all had, there were pros and cons to each one of them. And so it really didn't give us, it wasn't a great study there, because we didn't come out walking away saying, all right, well, we're definitely going to open up more stores like this. So we've learned, we've definitely learned things, but we can open up more stores. Right now we're more Boston North. I think getting down into the Framingham, the Natick area, I think absolutely makes sense. Getting into the South Shore and getting into Rhode Island and Connecticut, I think makes sense.
Yeah. George, let me ask you a long question.
Mm-hmm.
I would think too, if in certain places when you first open up, I'm guessing that when you first get there, when you first put a bin down, is it the case where once the bin goes in, there's probably like a huge flow of books that are coming in all at once, and then maybe there's a little drop off from time to time, but once people think, oh, there's that new bin that just went out, that's a good place for me to drop off my book.
Absolutely, we see that. We do see that big rush right away because it's there. It's something new. Usually the group did something to promote it. As I said, letting people know about it. So you get that big rush, and then, as I said, it might slow down a little bit. But then over time, as people continue to drive by and see that now, even if they're not ready to grab their stuff and put it in there right now, they know it's there. So when they do, and when it's time to clean up, they get their stuff together. They can go drop it right off in the bin. So we'll see that it actually does continue to grow over time.
So just ask a short one, Sean.
Okay. We didn't talk about the amount of employees that you have. You're up to about, it it started with you in the basement, then you hired one girl who's been with you for about 7 years, and then you're up to 100?
Well, actually, I hired one person who was with me. She was the wife of a Marine recruiter that has worked in the area. She worked with me for a few years until she moved. But it was just her. She used to bring her dog to work, watch soap operas while she worked, and she used to do shipping, customer service, pretty much do everything. Now we're up to about 100. We've now had somebody that just hit 7 years this month. She's been with us, which is great. She started when we had probably 15 employees. So she's seen all the changes, and it's now grown where we have people that have been sticking around for a long period of time now. Yeah, absolutely.
And then you'll be doing
Right. Get back to work. I always call the first employee the favorite employee, and Stacy yells at me. Stacy's in the front, and she's the one that's been with me 7 years, but I always say about Carol, I'm like, she was great, she was my favorite employee, actually. Call her your favorite employee.
Yeah.